Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. And I just wanted to say I love him.
June 25, 2009. 3 children lost their father.
TLA, apparently Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center.
Prince was 12 years old. Paris was 11. Blanket was just 7. In a single morning, the world they had known inside the walls of rented mansions and private estates collapsed completely. And the world outside those walls, the one that had watched their father for decades, suddenly turned its attention to them. For years after that day, Michael Jackson's children said very little publicly. They were protected by their grandmother, Catherine. They were kept away from interviews and cameras, and the press that had followed their father everywhere. They were allowed, as much as possible given the circumstances, to be children who were grieving, rather than children who were performing grief for an audience. But children grow up, and as Prince, Paris, and Blanket became adults, the silence began to break, slowly, carefully, in different ways and at different times. Each of them found their own path towards speaking about their father, about their childhood, and about the life they had lived inside one of the most unusual families in modern history. What they revealed, when they finally began to speak, was not what many people expected. It was more honest than that, more complicated than that, and in many ways, more human than the simplified versions of their father's story that the public had been offered for years. February 14, 1997, Prince Michael Jackson was born. He was the first of Michael Jackson's 3 children, and the one who arrived into a world where his father was already one of the most famous people alive. From the moment of his birth, his existence was news. His name was discussed. His future was speculated about by people who had never met him and never would. Paris Michael Catherine Jackson was born April 3, 1998, and Prince Michael Jackson II, who became known as Blanket and later as Biggie, was born February 21, 2002. 3 children born into circumstances that no parenting book had ever addressed. 3 children whose father was a global icon, a figure of enormous controversy, and, by their own accounts, a deeply present and deeply loving parent. The childhood they lived was genuinely unusual. They wore masks in public. Their faces were kept from cameras for years. They traveled between different homes across different countries. Their social world was small and carefully controlled. They were educated privately. Their friendships were limited by the reality of who their father was and what that meant for the safety of everyone around them. But inside that unusual external framework, the children themselves have described something that the public version of their father's life rarely made room for. They describe warmth, consistency, a father who was present in their daily lives in ways that went far beyond what most children of some famous parents ever experience. A father who cooked for them, read to them, watched films with them, and took their feelings and their opinions seriously. That version of Michael Jackson, the one his children describe from their own experience, is different enough from the tabloid version that it deserves serious attention. Because these are people who actually knew him, who lived with him, who saw him every day without cameras present. And what they say about that experience is consistent enough across all 3 of them that it forms a picture worth understanding. Of the 3 children, Prince Michael has been the most measured in how he has approached public life and public conversation about his father. He has moved carefully. He has built a life that is recognizably his own rather than simply an extension of his father's legacy. When Prince has spoken about Michael Jackson, he has spoken about a father, not an icon, not a performer, not the figure that the press constructed across decades of coverage. A man who made breakfast, a man who had opinions about films, a man who laughed and who worried and who was present in the ordinary moments of family life in ways that the extraordinary circumstances of that life sometimes made easy to miss. He has spoken about grief in terms that are direct and honest, about what it meant to lose a parent at 12 years old, about the particular difficulty of losing a parent whose death was public in the way his father's was, about processing grief while the whole world was also processing something, though not the same thing. Not the loss of a father, but the loss of a figure they had constructed in their own minds. He has also spoken about identity, about the work of becoming a person when the name you carry belongs to someone else first, about finding what he actually cares about and what he actually wants to do with his life, separate from the inheritance of that name. What comes through in what Prince has shared is someone who is doing that work carefully and seriously. Someone who respects what his father built without feeling obligated to simply continue it. someone who is trying to be his own person while also honoring the family he came from. Of the 3 children, Paris Jackson's been the most publicly open about her life, her experiences, and her father. She made a decision at some point in her early adulthood to engage with the world on her own terms, to speak rather than remain silent, to share rather than protect. That decision came with real costs. She has been scrutinized in ways that were not always fair and not always kind. The press that had been unable to photograph her face as a child eventually found ways to make her visibility a different kind of story. She has handled that with a combination of directness and resilience that people who knew her father find familiar. What Paris has said about Michael Jackson is some of the most honest public testimony about him that exists. She has not sanitized the picture. She has spoken about the difficulties of their life alongside the genuine love. She has acknowledged that their circumstances were unusual and that unusual circumstances have effects. She has not pretended that everything was perfect or that the grief she carried was simple. She has also spoken with unmistakable clarity about who her father was to her, about the specific things he did and said that stayed with her, about the values he tried to pass on, about the ways he prepared her as best he could for a world that would always see her through the lens of his name before it saw her as herself. She has spoken about mental health with a courage that echoes the courage her father showed when he spoke about his own difficult experiences in public. She has not hidden the hard parts of her story, and in not hiding them, she has done something that her father tried to do and often found difficult. She has let people see a real person rather than a constructed image. The youngest of Michael Jackson's 3 children has chosen the most private path of the 3. Blanket, who is asked to be called Biggie as he has grown older, has stayed largely away from public attention in ways that his older siblings have not. This is a choice that people who study the family understand and respect. The public eye landed on Biggie Jackson at a moment in his life when he was too young to have any say in it. The famous photograph of his father holding him over a balcony railing in Berlin in 2002 was one of the most discussed celebrity images of that year. He was 7 months old. He had no voice in any of it. Growing up with that as part of your history, as one of the defining images associated with your name before you were old enough to form a memory, shapes a person's relationship with public attention in ways that are not hard to understand. What has come through from the limited public appearances Biggie has made is someone who is thoughtful and who is finding his own way, someone who carries the Jackson name with awareness, but who is not defined entirely by it. Someone who, like his siblings, is doing the work of becoming a person in circumstances that most people will never have to navigate. His choice of privacy deserves as much respect as his siblings' choices of greater openness. All 3 of them are living genuine lives shaped by a genuine loss. All 3 of them are doing it their own way, and the quieter path is not a lesser one. The accounts that Michael Jackson's children have given of June 25, 2009 are among the most difficult parts of what they have shared publicly. Because they were there. They were in that house, and they experienced what happened not as a news event, but as the morning their father did not wake up. Paris Jackson has spoken about that day with a directness that is hard to read without feeling the weight of it. She has described confusion turning into understanding, turning into a grief that did not arrive all at once, but kept arriving in waves across the years that followed. She has talked about the difficulty of being surrounded, in those immediate hours and days, by a world that was also grieving, but grieving something different. The world grieved an icon. She and her brothers grieved their father. Those are not the same loss. And being inside the smaller, more personal version of that grief while the larger, public version was happening all around them was something she has described as profoundly isolating. Prince has spoken about the specific experience of being 12 years old and suddenly understanding that the protection his father had provided was gone, that the careful world that had been built around them, unusual as it was, had been built by someone who was no longer there to maintain it, and that everything from that point forward was going to require a different kind of navigation. What all 3 of them have communicated, in different ways and at different times, is that the loss was real and that it was lasting. That it did not resolve itself with time, in the simple way that people who have not experienced that kind of loss sometimes imagine grief works. That their father's absence has been a presence in their lives every day since that morning, across the different accounts that Michael Jackson's children have given over the years. A consistent picture of their father emerges, and that picture is worth examining carefully because it is based on direct personal experience, rather than on press coverage or public perception. They describe a man who was actively engaged in their lives. Not a distant famous parent who appeared occasionally and made grand gestures. Someone who was present in the ordinary moments, who helped with homework, who watched movies with them and talked about what they had seen, who took their opinions seriously and treated their feelings as things that mattered. They describe a father who was funny. This detail comes up repeatedly, and it is one of the things that surprises people whose image of Michael Jackson was shaped primarily by his public persona. He made his children laugh. He had a sense of humor that was playful and quick. He found joy in small things, and he shared that joy with them. They describe a father who talked to them about the world, about what was happening and why, about how to think about people and about fairness and about what mattered. He had opinions about things beyond music and performance, and he shared those opinions with his children in ways that were clearly intended to help them develop their own. They describe a father who worried about them, who was aware that their lives were unusual, and who thought carefully about what that meant for how they were growing up, who tried, within the limits of what his circumstances allowed, to give them as normal a foundation as he could. That father, the one his children describe, is the most accurate portrait of Michael Jackson that exists, because it comes from the people who knew him most directly and most honestly, and it is more complete than anything the press produced about him across 4 decades of coverage. One of the most revealing aspects of what Michael Jackson's children have shared publicly is the picture of what he tried to teach them, the values he wanted to pass on, the things he considered important enough to talk about repeatedly. He talked to them about kindness, not as a vague concept, but as a specific practice, about how to treat people who had nothing to offer you, about the difference between being polite because it was expected and being genuinely warm because it cost you something and you did it anyway. He talked to them about the world's problems and about personal responsibility toward those problems, about children in other parts of the world who did not have what they had, about what it meant to have resources and what obligation came with that. He talked to them about the music, about what it meant to him and why he made it, about the responsibility of having an audience and what you owed to people who trusted you with their attention, about the difference between performing and communicating. He talked to them about his own life. Not all of it. He was careful about what he shared with children, but he was honest with them about difficulty, about the fact that life was not always fair, about the experience of being misunderstood and what you did with that, about finding ways to maintain your sense of who you were when the world around you was telling a different story. These are not the lessons of a man who was checked out of fatherhood. These are the lessons of someone who took the role seriously and thought carefully about what his children needed to know to navigate the particular world they were going to have to live in. As Michael Jackson's children have moved into adulthood, the question of what they do with the inheritance they carry has become one that they are each answering in their own way. Prince has moved toward business and toward using the family name as a platform for work he finds meaningful. He has been thoughtful about which opportunities to take and which to decline. He has built relationships and made decisions that reflect someone with a serious sense of what he wants his life to look like. Paris has moved toward creative work, toward music and toward acting, toward using the platform that her name provides to do things that are genuinely hers, rather than simply extensions of what her father did. She has also become someone who speaks publicly about issues she cares about, particularly around mental health, in ways that reflect her father's willingness to use his voice for things beyond his career. Biggie has continued to move quietly and privately, building a life on his own terms in a way that reflects a clear sense of what he values. None of them are trying to be Michael Jackson. That would be both impossible and wrong. They are trying to be themselves, which is exactly what their father, by their own accounts, wanted for them. He told them that. He said it directly. He wanted them to find out who they were and to be that, fully and without apology. The legacy they are building is their own, but it carries something of him in it. The values he talked about, the seriousness with which he approached the question of what you owe to other people, the willingness to be honest about difficulty rather than constructing a version of your life for public consumption. Those things are present in who they are becoming, and they came from somewhere. The years during which Michael Jackson's children said very little publicly were not empty years. They were years of grieving and growing and becoming, years during which the silence was not absence but protection. Katherine Jackson protected her grandchildren with a care and a consistency that people who watched from the outside found moving. She kept them out of the public eye during the years when they were most vulnerable. She gave them the space to process their loss without having to perform that processing for an audience. The silence protected the truth of who their father was to them. Because the moment they began speaking, the press would begin interpreting, and the press's version of what they said would inevitably be shaped by the narratives that already existed about their father. The silence delayed that. It gave them time to know what they believed before they had to defend it. The silence also protected them from the specific kind of harm that comes from being public figures before you are ready. From having your words taken out of context before you have the experience to anticipate how that happens. From becoming a part of other people's stories about your father before you have fully formed your own. What came out when the silence finally broke was more considered and more grounded than it might have been if it had been forced earlier. The things Michael Jackson's children have said publicly reflect people who thought about what they wanted to say and why. That did not happen by accident. It happened because they were given the time and the space to get there. Running through everything that Michael Jackson's children have shared publicly over the years is a consistent underlying message. A thing they seem to want people to understand above everything else. They want people to know who their father actually was. Not the version constructed by tabloids across decades of coverage. Not the version that emerged from controversies and court cases and media narratives. The actual person, the father they knew. They are not asking anyone to ignore the complicated parts of their father's story. They are not asking for uncritical celebration of everything associated with his name. What they are asking for, in different ways and with different levels of directness, is honesty. A willingness to look at the complete picture rather than the simplified one. They want people to know that he loved them, that the love was real, and that it was expressed in ordinary daily ways that most people never got to see. That behind the performances and the controversies and the headlines, there was a man who put his children first in the time and attention and care he gave to his daily life. And they want people to know that losing him was real, that it was not the loss of an icon or a celebrity or a cultural figure. It was the loss of a father, and that loss has not diminished with time. It has simply become something they carry rather than something that overwhelms them. June 25, 2009, 3 children lost their father. And for years after that day, the world waited to hear what they would say when they were finally ready to speak. What they said, when they said it, was not what many people expected. It was quieter than that, more personal than that, more honest about both the love and the difficulty than the versions of their father's story that had dominated public conversation for decades. Michael Jackson's children revealed something that no documentary and no biography and no court proceeding had been able to provide. They revealed the father, the man who existed in the private spaces of our very public life, the person behind the name that the world had been arguing about for years. That person, as his children describe him, was someone who loved his family deeply and showed it in the ordinary daily ways that love is actually shown. Someone who thought carefully about the world and talked to his children about it. Someone who was funny and warm and present in ways that the public version of his story never quite captured. The years of silence are over. What came after that silence is worth hearing, and the picture it adds to everything else we know about Michael Jackson is the most complete one we have. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Daddy
Like this
has been
video,
the best
subscribe, and turn
father
on
you
notifications,
could ever
because
imagine.
the story of what Michael Jackson left behind is still being told by the people who knew him best.